Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. I'm Zivile and I'm very excited to have you here today for the New Year's Eve special episode. Tomorrow we're all getting into 2025 and some of you might know already that I do love rituals like traditions, and last year I shared the framework. How can we make most of our planning for upcoming year? And today I thought what would be really valuable in this whole noisy world, and also the challenges I have experienced by building ventures this year and trying, testing, failing, just goal setting. Especially if you're a visionary or you're coming from a different background and you really want to build something. We tend to have such big visions, but then what happens then? We get lost in translation. And that path is so far away that when we don't know how to actually structure it and schedule that into smaller goals, we lose sight of our big vision at some point when we don't narrow it down. So today it's all about unlocking our potential and setting up ourselves for success, or basically how to make 2025 the best year ever. I really hope so, because every year is a great year as much as we make it out of it, right? So anyway, today I'm going to be joined by Dan Tyre, who is a motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and HubSpot's legendary employee number 6, which is my favorite number, by the way. And Dan spent decades igniting the potential of individuals and businesses alike, from scaling startups to mentoring leaders worldwide. And he's also an investor. He runs his own mentorship program, and I'm really proud to be part of it. And I would encourage you to check it out too. And yeah, so Dan will join me today to dive into the questions such as how do you define success and what does success mean in nowadays noisy world, and how can we overcome this whole negativity, fear of failure. We have this very short time span culture where it's really difficult to grasp the attention, and most importantly, I think, what actionable steps can we all take right now to make our dreams a reality? So I'm really looking forward to and yeah, let's dive in to learn together with Dan Tyre. Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Dan, welcome to Perception Paradox.
Woo! Zivile, I love it. This is super exciting. We've been planning this for a couple of weeks now, and super fun in the briefing meeting. So I'm excited about this.
Thank you for joining. Big honor, big pleasure. So for the ones who don't know, Dan and I, we met during Tech Chill, which is a great conference happening in Latvia. And yeah, and then I joined the mentorship program. We stayed in touch, and now I'm really glad to welcome Human Perception Paradox, because I could not imagine a better person to do the New Year's Eve episode than Dan, who I'm pretty sure will help us set ourselves to success in 2025. Am I right, Dan?
You are right. Number one, we've known each other for a little bit more than a year. Number two, I've always been impressed with your ability to try to help people, right? Your amazing accomplishments, and you're a learn-it-all. You like to do different things and you like to learn different things. So, and the focus on underdogs, right? Underdogs is like the key. Why do you focus on underdogs?
Yeah, I think it's important to give a spotlight for people who are grounding and grinding, and to show the real grind and the real struggle before you go into your success, or your success. You define the success you defined yourself.
Amazing. On Instagram, it looks like everybody's getting into a private jet. Everybody's getting into a stretch limo. Everybody's just, money is falling from the heavens. And in reality, that's not the way the world works, right? You got to grind it out. You got to work through the problems. You got to make sure as an entrepreneur, right, you know that there's lots of potholes that you're going to fall into, right? And supporting that underdog, right, so that everybody understands, number one, you can do it. Right. And the studies say that if you have one person that will tell you can do it, you want to make this podcast the number one podcast in Europe. Right. Amazing. So let's do it. And that's a lofty goal, and you're going to do it. And I'm happy to be part of that journey.
Amazing things then. But you've been building businesses yourself, right?
That's right. Over the last 46 years, right, I've had 6 startups. right? And I'm the luckiest guy in the world. You know that. I've told you that before. I've been married for 35 years to the amazing Einikyte. I just have the big energy. Einikyte is the smart tire, right? She has all the wisdom, right? I clip all of her great content. She's like, Dan, don't steal my content, which is hard because she's always saying smart things. I've got two socially responsible children that are amazing that are launched, and one lives in New York City, one lives in California. And then over the last almost 50 years, 6 startups, 2 are unicorns. So when I graduated college, I was a bass player in a heavy metal rock and roll band. I had hair longer than yours. Oh, my goodness. Right? Which was like really fun, but, you know, it's hard to take care of. So I had to like get a real job. It's really fun. It's just like you don't make a lot of money when you're at that level in rock and roll. And so I had sold books door to door to work my way through university. And I knew I was a pretty good salesperson. So I went to work for the worst run company in American business. This company was called the Computer Store. They had an exclusive to sell Apple computers east of the Mississippi River in the United States, like half the country, and they found a way to screw it up. And I worked for that company for like a year. And my boss was this guy, Roger, and we sold Apple IIe's. I met Steve Jobs, which was amazing, right?
That's wild.
And Apple IIe's were at the time, you paid like $3,000 or $4,000, and it was a little computer with a floppy disk. I don't know. Will your listeners know what a floppy disk is?
I'm pretty sure they will. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they will.
A 5.25-inch floppy disk, right?
I do recall them.
Ask your grandfather, what the heck is a floppy disk?
And you could have the colorful ones. I really like to choose the color. That was so great.
Anyway, my boss, Roger, comes in one day and he goes, I'm quitting. I'm like, you're quitting? Why? He goes, I'm going to a startup. I'm like, what's a startup? He's like, it's a small business. It's going to grow very, very quickly. I'm like, all right, knock yourself out. He goes, no, I want to take you with me. I'm like, I already got a job. He's like, I'll give you $75 more US per month. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a startup guy.
More?
Exactly. Remember when you're like 20 years old and $75 is like, oh my goodness, right? That's amazing. That's the way I felt. And so I jumped to this company that was about $2 million in 1981. And over the next 9 years, it grew to $1.4 billion, right?
That's
and
wild.
Dave Norman and Enzo Teresi were the founders. I started as a sales guy. Then I moved to a sales manager. Then I moved to a general manager. Then I moved to an area director. I taught sales training and worked in LA, San Francisco, and then New York. And it was amazing. And I learned how to scale businesses, right? The Tyre wisdom is always that every business is a good one, a good takeaway for your listeners. Every business is a people business. And Zivile, you do that very well. I've never seen you treat anybody like being mean, right? You've got an open heart. You talk to people like wherever they're from, which is one of the keys to your success. And like winning the hearts and minds of the people in your organization, sometimes they're a little skeptical, especially if they don't know you. And the ability to meet people as human beings, right? That's one of the keys of business in 2024, 2025. You got to treat people like human beings. I wish I didn't have to remind people of that, right? But when you spam people with stupid emails, when you're a little bit mean over the phone, when you're not like moving through life with an open heart, if you're like just going for profits, that's not really treating people like human.
I think we watch too much Wall Streets and all the bankers. Vibe.
That's right. I had a great entrepreneur tell me this week. He said, we shouldn't celebrate the people who raised $10 million in funding. We should celebrate the companies that are successful to get to 10 million doing it the right way. And so this company was called Businessland. There were 300 people when I started, maybe a little less. There were 3 people in my area, right? And then it grew to thousands and thousands. It was traded on the NASDAQ. And I learned how to grow companies quickly. So after 10 years, I quit. I started my own company, ALI Technologies, which was focused on a collaborative technology. And over the next 9 years, we built that to $30 million. I sold it to a Phoenix-based company. And that's how I got to Paradise Valley, Arizona in the United States, right? And that was super fun. There's a lot of changes in that kind of process. And I learned a lot as a CEO and founder. My third startup was a nationwide training company that was highly successful. My fourth startup got bought out by Microsoft. Lucky me. And my boss at Groove Networks was this guy, Brian Halligan. And when Microsoft bought Groove, right, he went to MIT. I worked for Microsoft for about a year, which was amazing. And then when he started his company, he called me. Then he's like, I want you to start the company with me. And I'm like, why? He's like, you're a good startup guy. You got a lot of energy, which is true. And you know how to pick up the phone and call people, which is true. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? He's like, I want you to be our first salesperson. And I'm like, All right. And so I asked my wife, can I go to Boston 4 weeks out of the month? She's like, no, because I lived in Arizona. I'm like, can I go there 3 weeks out of the month? She's like, no. I'm like, how about 2 weeks out of the month? She's like, no. I'm like, how about 1 week out of the month? She's like, maybe. So I called Brian up. I'm like, can I be there only 1 week out of the month? She goes, yeah, we'll figure it out. And so in 2007, I was employee number 6 at a company called HubSpot. And
I might have heard about that.
exactly. And HubSpot was an amazing company because, first of all, the first 10 employees, I was the only one who wasn't trained at MIT in their business school, the Sloan Business School. And the people were incredibly smart. They were incredibly empathetic. They understood the new way of buying, and we called it the inbound revolution. And in 2018, I wrote a book called The Inbound Organization with my buddy Todd Hockenberry, which was everything
It's great.
It's amazing. Yes, Todd added so much, and I felt so honored and blessed to be able to share the things that I had learned. Right. And the inbound revolution at the time in 2007 was about tricking out your website so that you could get leads through your website without having to pay Google. And it was the birth of the new way of helping people before you'd sell to them. In the old days, if you wanted to buy something, you had to talk to a salesperson to find out how big it was, how expensive it was, what colors it came in. And there was no internet. I know I sound like your grandfather, but there was no other way to do it. Right. You went to Yellow Pages. Were there Yellow Pages in Lithuania? Where you went to a book? Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's still Yellow Pages in your grandmother's house or something like that. You can find them. But that's the way you bought it. And you had to talk to a salesperson. So they had all the power. With the internet, right, you could find anything online. And so what the transfer of power was the ability for people to investigate. And then the salesperson played a different role. And that was to help, not to sell. And what I learned in the inbound revolution is that, first of all, you got to treat people like human beings. It's a very good, it's not squishy, right? If you're mean to people, they're not going to buy from you, right? In the old days, there were only 3 options, so they had to buy from you. Today, there are 50 options all over the world. There are people in Latvia, people in Estonia, people in Finland who are all doing the same kind of thing. And if you don't take care of your employees and take care of your customers, right, they'll go someplace else. Number 2, you've got to help before you sell, which is one of the reasons for your success of this podcast, right? You've always wanted to help people. I don't know where you got that from. Where did you get that from? Where did you learn how to help people?
I've got it from my mama. I've got it from my papa.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to call your parents. Or send them this episode and tell them, because that is one of the reasons for your success, right? You realize that it's not just about you, it's about helping other people. Number 3, the riches are in the niches. The reason why I like the Underdog podcast is because it's specific for people who consider themselves underdogs, right? And you're going out and saying, this is my demographic. This is what we're going to talk about. This is how I'm going to get people motivated so that they can go through the grind and the difficult kind of stuff, which is an incredible kind of thing. I always say the riches are in the niches. And if you can define the people that you can help the best, that goes a long way towards ensuring that you're going to be successful. And then you always look at the data, right? Even 5 years ago, we didn't have the data that we have now. Well, you understand who your listeners are, where they're coming from, nationality they are, all of the IP addresses, all of that information. There's lots of interaction and exchange so that you can understand the best way that you can help them, right? And then your real competitive advantage is making sure that you're helping them in a way in which you're meeting them at every stage of the process. Some people are just in the education mode, right? And that's fine. You just have to give them the education kind of information. Some people are in consideration mode where they're they don't want to know about your product. They want to know a competitive advantage and things like that. And some people are in decision mode where they're going to decide pretty quickly. And all of those are a little bit different. That customer experience is super important.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was at HubSpot for 17 years. That was my 5th startup. It went from 0 revenue to $2.4 billion. And I was a pretty good entrepreneur before that, but HubSpot changed everything. Number 1, because I was an earning employee. Number 2, I did a lot of public speaking. That's when you and I met at Tech Show. Yeah. The reason why Louise invited me is because one of my roles at HubSpot was to train partners on how to sell. And she's like, you got to come to Latvia and teach everybody how to sell. I'm like, everybody? She's like, everybody, right? And it was so much fun and so many incredible entrepreneurs. And I'm going back again this year. You're going back this year, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
And I think we're actually having a panel together.
Exactly. I think you're going to interview me, right? I'll know all the answers because I know all the questions, right? But it's going to be very, very fun. And I got to say that that event, amazing and exciting. And the people that I've met there have that right ability to like grind it out, that ability to, this is what we have to do. This is how we have to get there. And providing them a little help of connecting the dots is usually, it's a good use of my time.
Well, the Baltics is the Baltics, like we're up and growing. But then, Dan, your career sounds incredible, right? It seems like you were on the right path. It kind of, the stars were aligned basically your way. How did that happen? Did you always Did you always have that positive can-do attitude and mindset, or there was someone who actually brought you into this whole positivity, can-do, and successful path?
That's a very good question. And my personal story is when I was growing up, right, my family didn't have that positive attitude. In fact, it was the exact opposite. I was 30 years old before I realized, hey, right, you can be happy, right? You can be happy as you want. Right. And there's a great book called Learned Optimism, right? Learned Optimism. And this author talks about a positive attitude as a competitive advantage for yourself and your life. Right. And I can't remember how I kind of discovered that, but I realized, holy cow, there are lots of people out there who live their life like differently. They don't worry about all these things. They don't have imposter syndrome. And then I read the information and I'm like, that's the kind of life I want to live. I want to help people understand that they can be as happy, as successful as they want. And then I spent 30 years trying to apply it to myself and trying to apply it to other people so that we can refine it and learn it. And in 2024, moving into 2025, there's a science behind it. And running a mentor program, one of the things that I recommend is that people write down their goals, right? And as part of the Tyre mentorship program, you're required to read a book. And the book is called Succeed by Dr. Heidi Grant. And what did you learn when you read the book Succeed by Dr. Heidi Grant?
I think that one of the learnings was like that I was totally misunderstanding the goal setting and the role of it. It was definite. And I was looking from a very, very wrong angle, and this way closing myself from success, I would say.
Amazing. And she did 2 years of research. She's a Columbia PhD, and she did 2 years of research, and she found out that the people who actually set goals, right? And when I do my public speaking, I ask people in the audience, how many people have set goals? Everybody raises their hand. I'm like, how many people have it written down? 90% of the hands go down. And if you haven't written it down, that's not really a goal because it's too easy to change your mind. It's too easy to forget. It's too easy to have somebody not check it. Right. So I'm going to post this year. I've already promised 5 people.
Okay.
Once the podcast drops, I'm going to post my 2024 goals online, right, at dantyre.com. And everybody will see what my goals are for the year. And then you'll see my financial goals. You'll see my business goals. You'll see my HubSpot goals. You'll see my speaking goals. You'll see my fun goals. You'll see my relationship goals with my beautiful wife. All these things, right? And next to them, it says done, done. Done. Once in a while, it says in process because I didn't get all of them, right? But I got most of them because I've been setting goals for 45 years. And there's a key to do it, right? The key of setting goals is understanding what you want. It's being intentional, right? You're very good at this. You understand that the secret of life is figuring out what you want to do, right? If you're a young adult and there's too much stuff going on, that's okay. You sit with it. You don't have to do it all in 1 year. Yeah. Right. You overachievers listening to this podcast, you're like, yeah, but I want to do everything. I'm like, calm down. Right. Number one, you can get to it. Number two, let's figure out what's the most important for you and for the people that matter in your life in the next 12 to 18 months. And then let's find out what's important over the next 5 or 10 or 20 years. If you commit both of those to writing, right, it has an incredible impact on your life because now you have a North Star. You're like, no, now these are the things that are important to me. And then if you need a mentor or somebody to hold you accountable, right, there's usually not somebody who's related to you, right, but somebody who can be available. And if people on the podcast don't have a mentor, let me know. Go to dantyre.com or send Zivile an email and we'll figure out ways that we can help as long as you're willing to commit to the guidelines of the program. And as long as you're willing to read the book, right, then we're willing to find somebody who can hold you accountable so you can do all the great things you want to do in the world.
Amazing. So how did your definition of success change when you started setting goals?
Amazing. When I first started, I grew up middle class, worked my way through university. So I wanted to do three things. Number one, I wanted to, right, which I have. I have had more fun than anybody in the world, right? I like went through life and I did everything, right? I'm a yes man. I do this. I went to Latvia because Louise asked me to. That's the only reason I'm on this podcast is because I didn't even know where Latvia was, right? And Louise, like, it's near Eastern Europe. I'm like, all right, well, let's go. And all those people I met, all the entrepreneurs that I met, amazing, right? But that's like having fun was always a guideline. Number two, I wanted to learn stuff, right? Early in my career, I wanted to understand the foundations of business, right? And the Tyreisms that I teach all the entrepreneurs is number one, every business is a people business. You can't forget the people. And sometimes we get all wrapped up in our profit and our numbers and stuff. But you've got to be respectful of human beings. Number two, you always start with the goals and work backwards. So for me, when I'm advising or serving on the board of directors of a company, regardless of where they are in the world, I want to understand what the goals are, right? Because if you don't know what the goals are, it's very hard to get focus and clarity. It's kind of like a personal goals. It's kind of like like you setting your personal goals. And if they're not set, then it's just not the same kind of process. And there's different ways to get to those goals, right? So learning things was a very important component for me. And the third was to make money. I wanted to make money. And so I moved into the sales realm. Back then, sales was a big thing. Sales got all the money. If you were in marketing, you got like 5% of the money, and sales got 95% of the money. They got all of the glory, and sales was the big kahuna. Marketing was always in the doghouse. I don't know why that was, because marketing played an equal role, and today they're equal, right? It could be argued that marketing is more important to sales in the internet age because of a variety of different reasons, and I've made that statement many, many times. But for me, the three things that I was solving for when I graduated was number one, to have fun. Number two, to learn things. And number three was to make money. And then I did.
It was great. Congrats. I'm so...
thank you very much. Right? It sounds easy. It sounds like...
Exactly.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I wanted to say, Dan. It sounds so easy and so smooth with all this positivity. But we do see the stats of so many New Year's resolutions, goals, business, private. They do fail. Maybe, okay, it lasts 1 month, 2 months that we stick to them, but then they just do fail. So how do we really stick to the goals, and how do we define our path forward and our path towards getting there?
Amazing. It's a great question. I love this question. You put this in the briefing sheet. I'm like, yes, you're asking the right questions, because this is the key of getting things done. If you and I just have a conversation, you're like, I want to do that, right? But you don't have the commitment to write it down, to hold yourself accountable to do that, to take the baby steps to get there, it's not the same, right? You might get there, but the statistics show that probably not, right? If you write it down and then I tell you 12 times a year, okay, how are we doing on this one? How are we doing on this one? You want a disappointment. You're seeing that at least 12 times a year. Sometimes we have people put that on their mirror. Sometimes we say every morning when you get up, right? First of all, you're going to be intentional on what you're going to do. After setting my goals for the last 40 years, the reason why it says done, 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 is I'm an expert at goal setting. I have what's called Goldilocks goals, because I know is Goldilocks the lady with the porridge?
Maybe.
You might not have Goldilocks in Lithuania.
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. It's a fairy tale where the porridge, do you have porridge in Lithuania?
We do have porridge.
Okay. And it's part of the story is it's not too hot, it's not too cold. Right. And so as it relates that to goals, I know how to set my goals where when I'm going to set them, I back them up just a little bit. Right. So it's kind of unfair, because the reason I know I'm going to hit them is because I know how I work. I know pretty much what I'm going to do. I know that I could put in an aspirational goal or a stretch goal, and then I back them down a little bit. So after 40 years, like, I'm pretty hardcore, and like right up at the top. Right. My mission has changed from having fun and learning stuff and making money to doing the most good for the universe, which I stole from my son, Eli. Right. Because he's like, Dad, those are internal. Right. Don't you want to help the world? And Eli's so smart. And he was right. Right. It's so much more fun to help everybody. This podcast is amazing because there are all these people sitting in their car or driving and they're like, I need that inspiration. And that's what you're providing them. And I'm here to tell you, Zivile, you're Zivile. You can do anything, right? And I've told you that before, right?
Yes, you did.
And
Thank
why
you,
don't I
Dan.
tell you that? I tell everybody that. It's not exclusive to you. I tell Amy
Yeah.
Tyre, you're Amy Tyre, you can do anything. I tell Sally Tyre, you're Sally Tyre. Why do I do that?
To remind people
Yes.
that there is someone who believes in them. I think when I was looking back into my whole journey and path, I did quite a lot of bold decisions in my life that I've never had a clear explanation for that, but I did have my why I wanted to pursue some specific career paths, goals, moving to other countries. I've never knew how it's going to work out, but I always had one thing. My parents, by their trust, had my back. I'm not talking about some financial support. It was literally them trusting me in the process. I would ask them one question. Okay, Dad, do you trust me? I'm just going to Vienna next week and quitting my job and everything. And I'm just going to go there, try to build startup, work for startup. I was like, what? I was like, do you trust me? He said yes. And that was all I need. So I think it sounds, the psychological aspect there is similar, that someone has a trust and then someone trusts you. You trust the process even more.
Amazing. Is that on your podcast somewhere, your background and story? Because that is flat. That's what we sat on a bus together, right? Zivile and I sat on a bus together. We had this conversation and I'm looking at her like, you did all of that kind of stuff as a young woman, doing all these kind of things. And your parents did the exact right thing. They not only trusted you, but they believed in you, right? And for all the people who are listening to this podcast, right, everybody has the capability of getting things done. Right? There are a couple of things you have to do. Number one, decide that you really want, right? You have to be intentional about what you want to do. And once again, you don't have to do it all next year, but you're like, this is what I want to do. That's why we suggest that people do their 12-month goals. They also have their 5-year, their 10-year, and 20-year goals, so you have a little bit of that direction. Number two, you have to find somebody who will hold you accountable for working towards that, right? Number three, you actually have to do it. And there's lots of people who have lots of big plans. A few of them will commit it to writing, although lots of people are like, I'm not going to write that down. I'm like, why? They're like, then you're going to make me do it? I'm like, I'm not going to make you do it. That's the key to actually doing it. And then the final piece, which cannot be ignored, is you got to actually do it. You went to Vienna. You got that ticket. You went there. You found an apartment. You started in the incubator. You worked with all these startups. That is not insignificant. And lots of people think that, like on Instagram, that it's just overnight success. Right? Dan Tyre wasn't an overnight success. It took me 45 years, right, of grinding it out. And there's lots of twists and turns, right? I tell people about the challenges that I've had in my relationship. I tell people about the times that I've gotten fired. And they're like, you got fired? I got fired in HubSpot, right? I had to take a new job because I lost the hearts and minds of people. That's where I learned you can never lose the hearts and mind, right? But I wanted to stay with the company. I loved what they were doing in regard to the approach. Right? There are plenty of times I made every single mistake possible, right? Learning things, the ways you can learn them. You can read a book, right? Or you can actually make a stupid mistake, right? And you're like, okay, I'm never going to do that again, right? And when you're 66-year-old looking back on that, that is the most where you really learn the lesson, right? Because when you read the book, it's like, okay, kind of interesting. When your stomach is all knotted up because you just did something incredibly hurtful or stupid, like, then you're like, okay, I got that lesson. I'm ready to move on. And it helps you build this foundation of wisdom that hopefully you can pass on to other people. The most important part of that is that's what a human being is all about. We all make dopey mistakes. We all do twists and turns. Sometimes there's just things that happen in your life that are hard to overcome, right? But you're Zivile. You can do anything, right? And if you fall into that pothole, right, like you've done 100 times, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off. People listen to this podcast. One of the greatest attributes for grinding it out is recovery, right? Which I learned 20 years ago from my daughter, right? And recovery is very important because you're going to get talked off balance. There's going to things that are happening, political issues like global conflicts, pandemics, right? Those things are impossible to anticipate, right? But when that happens, right, you can either choose to wallow in pity and blame, like, this screwed me up, or you take personal responsibility and you get moving. You're like, okay, this is the cards I've been dealt. What do we need to do to solve for this? What do we need to do to set the goals and work backwards. What do we need to do to use our smarts, our thoughtfulness, our connections so that we can go ahead and reverse engineer to get where we want to be? And those are the kind of people who have the #1 podcast in Europe, who speak all over the world, who run mentor programs, who help entrepreneurs, who support the underdog and do great stuff.
Wow, Dan, super inspiring. And I was about to ask you, how do you cope with the setbacks and the failures? But you literally just answered what you collect yourself and move forward.
Here's what I tell all of the entrepreneurs. Tyre Angel is an investment company that we invest in companies that are scaling, right? We look for women-led founders, right? Which, because they don't get a lot of venture capital or angel, it's harder for them. And people of color, same category. Right. So as I started investing in scale-up companies 10 years ago, I'm like, that's no fair. Right. Women and classes that need a little help, they have great ideas, too. And it's been a great decision because my portfolio is worth over $1 billion. Not my part of it, but the total market cap. And it's been very, very fun to teach people the things that I've learned. Right, which is every business is a people business. Start with the goals and work backwards. The importance of grinding it out. And people think that grinding it out is like just having a cup of coffee. And what they don't realize is the first 8 years of HubSpot, every Saturday, every Sunday, 12-hour days, right? Amazing. And one of the reasons the company was able to scale to over $1 billion in revenue is because the attitude, the teamwork, the culture, and the business model, where that's what we did. That's what we had to do. Until we figured out what the scalability process is, we had to do it like the hard way. But there's something incredibly validating about that. Ryan Holiday, do you know Ryan Holiday?
The ego is your enemy and all the different pieces.
Exactly. Good. That guy's amazing. I've never met him, but I read all of his stuff. And he's a big believer in, like, you got to grind it out. And it's true. The people who grind it out translate their ideas into actual working it through. Of course, you're going to make mistakes. Now, I'm a quick starter, right? When you're like, will you be on my podcast? I'm like, yeah. And then we scheduled it for like a week later, right? Yeah. Because number one, I wanted to do everything. Number two, I'm pretty good at podcasts, although I don't know if your listeners are aligned with my big energy.
Just let us know in the comments how Dan is doing.
Yeah. If you want me to calm down, it's hard, but like I'll try. And I get so pumped up and excited, right? Because I want everybody to understand that they're powerful. I want everybody to understand it doesn't matter how smart you are, how experienced you are, your age, none of that stuff matters, right? There's so much power in every single human being that you just have to harness it. And that's why my mantra is, you're Zivile. You can do anything. I tell that to everybody. But if I can get you to believe that, right, now all of a sudden that grind is a little bit easier. Now, all of a sudden, you're like, you know what? That's right. Then the next time you fall into that pothole, you're like, okay, I could wallow all week. That guest who said he was going to come on and then blew me off, right? Okay, that happens, right? It's going to happen if it hasn't happened already. And like, so what? It's not something you can control. Yamini Rangan, who's the CEO of HubSpot, an amazing woman, a brown woman who runs a $2.5 billion software company here in the United States. Right? She says, focus on the things that you can control. Don't focus on the things that other people are doing. Just focus on the things that you can control. And the potholes that happen in my life are things that like happen, right? And like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel bad for that for about a day. And sometimes I'm going to feel bad about that for about an hour. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's a minute. I'm going to feel bad about that for a minute. I got to move on, right? Because I want to bring that energy, that I want to lead by example to everybody I talk to and connect with.
Amazing. You just literally spelled out what does it take to build a great company. And it seems we are all looking for the secret recipe, but at the end of the day, you just have to put the work and mindset and the team to do the things.
There's a lot of wisdom in what you just said. Number one, you have to have a plan. There are two types of entrepreneurs that I see. One is they're like, I need $1 million to build this up. And I'm like, all right, do you have a rich uncle? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right, have you had a successful exit? They're like, no. I'm like, is it going to be easy or hard for you to raise $1 million US? They're like, it's going to be easy because it looks like it's easy. There are all these people in Silicon Valley who raised $10 million, right? What they don't tell you is their uncle is the partner in the VC firm that gave them the $10 million, or they've had a successful exit previously, or they're just privileged, right? If you're going to start, my recommendation, and I tell this to all entrepreneurs, there's two ways to go. You can go for the big raise. Although my feeling is that VC in 2025 isn't the same as it was over the last 15 years. It's a much different type of approach. based on the economic reality of private equity, of IPOs, of ways companies grow. And there's a thought process that raising as a little capital as possible, right? My buddy Greg Head calls it practical founders, raising as little capital as possible and taking like $40,000, you proving the concept and going out and then growing a little bit slower, but a little bit more profitably, right? So you're not taking on this big overhead, not giving up a lot of your equity to VC. Maybe a better approach, or at least a alternative approach than what we've seen over the last 15 years. And it's intoxicating to say, I'm going to raise money. But what you're actually doing is giving up control, because as soon as you like raise a certain amount of money, now you're working for the man. Now you have to hit those 100% milestones, which is always, it's not always good for the founders, not always good for the employees, not always good for the customers. Right. And so I think that just taking a little bit of money and proving the concept and then maybe growing a little bit slower, but retaining more of the equity could be a good way of approaching scaling a company in 2025.
That's really great. Thank you, Dan, for sharing. Yeah, because it is, the landscape is shifting and it is changing. And we see a lot of focus on AI and health coming up. So that's going to be very interesting to see where technology.
Yeah, you were born in the right generation, right? I was born about 30 years too early, right? Because I've lived through 5 generations. I lived through the PC revolution. I lived through the internet revolution. I lived through the SaaS revolution. I lived through the smartphone revolution and now the AI revolution.
Yeah.
And I use AI 4 times an hour, right? All of the answers and the things that we talk about, like I'm always in Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. Just gives access with this energy. Right now, I was never the smartest guy in the room, but now I can kind of be, right? And as long as you understand that it's part of the process, as long as you're thoughtful about the way you apply it, as long as we don't destroy humanity because AI runs amok, that's what Eli's working on, then I'm confident that we can get to the next level. Right. And that's super exciting. This generation, right, has technology that is unlike anything in the history of humans for healthcare, for food, for sustainability. And as long as we don't screw that up, it's going to be a great next 100 years. I can't wait to see it. Right. I can't wait to see Tech Chill this year. Oh, my goodness. There's so many great companies last year, although it's going to be a little colder this year.
Because it's going to be proper Tech Chill.
Yeah. I don't have a coat. It's 50 degrees out and I'm wearing
we will organize something. I'll take it from Lithuania or Denmark. It depends from where I'm coming from. Yay. Anyway, but this is great, Dan, all that you're sharing. So since you had such an incredible roller coaster and the whole career, so do you have any memorable moment or advice that you have received from someone that shaped your journey, that helped to shape your journey?
So many. The reason I started a mentor program is because I had great mentors in my life. I think it was Frank Ogier. Maybe it was David Cancel, who was a executive at HubSpot, who went on to start a company called Drift here in the United States, highly successful. He asked me to start a mentor program at HubSpot. I think it was in 2012. I teamed up with Frank Ogier and Mike Champion. Mike Champion did a lot of this work on a program called Cephalopod. Oh, that's another good reminder for entrepreneurs. If you're going to do a special project, give it an animal code name, right? Like this podcast should be the Cheetah Podcast or the Leopard Podcast. And have you ever heard, do you know what a cephalopod is? No one does, right? You have to be a developer it's like a mollusk that has a big brain. And this guy, Mike Champion's like, let's call it cephalopod. I'm like, what the hell is that? And he's like, it's a very smart animal, and mentorship program is all about learning from smart people. I'm like, okay, that's good. No one will know what it means, but that's good. And so we established it at HubSpot, I think in 2012 or 2014. And I was pitching the senior executives on why we needed a little bit of funding for this program. And I started my conversation or my presentation with, my name is Dan Tyre, and we're starting this program for mentorship at HubSpot. And how many of the senior executives, raise your hand if you had good mentors when you were scaling your business and growing through the corporate ranks? And how many people do you think raised their hand?
Like 1, 2?
All of them. Everybody. Some people say that, just 1 or 2. Everybody
I thought
in the room.
It depends because it could have been both.
Exactly. And I didn't put that in the briefing sheet. So it's a little bit of a curveball. I was amazed. I thought I was going to get 1 or 2 people. Everybody who made the C-suite at HubSpot, which is the smartest company in the world, had good mentorship. And I'm like, that's amazing. And it was because, right, number one, they knew that it was important to have a mentor or somebody took them under their wing. Number two, there was somebody that can help them see around corners, right? And I had the most amazing mentors. This guy, Steve Levy, we were just talking about him this morning. He was so smart. He was so empathetic, right? He didn't have quite the energy that I have, but pretty close. And everybody was the same to him. Doesn't matter if you were like sweeping the aisles or you were a senior executive or you're the president of the United States. He would just treat everybody so warmly and had a great memory and was so smart. And he did so. This guy, Fred Snow, amazing, right? I'll never forget. I was on a subway in New York City and he's like, Dan, right? Why do you get so angry? Right? It doesn't lend itself to making good decisions when you're that angry. And I'm like, okay, Fred, that's right. And Fred was a great executive at Businessland and then at Adobe. And so having those mentors in your life to help you understand, number one, and remind you what's important. Number two, sometimes, right, in the Tyre mentorship program, we don't make any of the decisions, right? We just know the questions to ask so that you make the decisions. And then we have the reinforcement that if you make the right decision, we want you to know you made the right decision. Hopefully you're thinking, I made the right decision bringing you on this podcast, right? Because if you're not thinking that, then, because I know I get a little excited there. Or if you make the wrong decision, right, then we're like, okay, well, what did you learn? As we said before, an important component of learning is you made the wrong decision. You're never going to do that again. Now that you can put that in your knowledge base and hopefully learn from that so you can continue to move on.
I mean, the more you fail, the easier it is to fail later.
It's easy to say that, though. It's hard when you just blew a deal. I'm working as a sales coach for this guy who I met. One of the fun things that I do is office hours. In fact, Luis set me up for office hours in Riga, Latvia on the day before Tech Show. And office hours are so much fun. It's so much fun. We sit there and entrepreneurs come in and they send us the three things that have them stuck. Right? The three things that they have in difficulty usually is they're not growing quick enough or they can't deliver quite as good or they have cash flow issues that they're trying to raise, which I've seen a million times. In 2010, we started a program called HubSpot for Startups. And that's where I started my angel career, right? Investing in companies that were going to scale and giving them advice and helping them like figure out pivots and kind of next steps. Right. And office hours, these people will schedule time and I'll ask them a little bit about themselves. I'll ask them how they got into the situation. I'll ask them what their options are. And then I'll try to make recommendations so that they get unstuck. And many times people are like, how do you know all this stuff? Right. And it's because after you've done it 5,000 times, you see some trends. Number two, it's never exactly the same. Right. Number three, I don't make the decisions. I'm like, let's just discuss the different options that you may have. Right. You're the CEO. You have to make all of the decisions. So you might as well get used to it. But it's super fun. The Tyre office hours. This entrepreneur, he's got a company that is highly regarded, has won a variety of innovation awards here in Arizona. And he has a customer that he wanted to close a deal on by the end of the year. And it wasn't closed, and he wasn't sure what to do. And so he scheduled time at office hours. And so this is a very important deal for the company. It will completely transform the company. He's in Arizona and the decision maker is in Colorado. And if somebody said, Zivile, what should I do to close that deal? What advice would you give him?
To close that one deal, he's
got one deal. He knows who the decision maker is.
Yeah.
He's in Arizona. She's in Colorado.
I would go there to find that person.
Amazing.
I don't know.
That's exactly right. Zivile, boom, the entrepreneur. But he didn't see that. You're like, okay, you got to close this deal. What are you doing in Arizona? Right? You get over and first of all, call that lady and see if she'll meet with you on Monday, which he did. And she said, sure.
That's great.
Also, too, you go to, in the old days, we used to call it belly to belly. Being in the same room with somebody is this old sales guy, Tommy Hopkins, used to go belly to belly. That means like get in the same room with. And he asked all these questions, which we prepped him for. And it's a real deal. But by going there, first of all, he showed them that it's important. Second of all, they got a lot of stuff done. Third of all, there's a lot of stuff that he didn't know that he was able to learn. So you could do office hours as well. Zivile office hours, that's awesome. But he didn't see how important that was. right? It's because he was in his head. And he's like, if they wanted me there, they would have asked me. I'm like, no. That's not the way it works. And so he got there, right? And now he's working through the next part of the deal.
This is great, Dan. Thank you for sharing. So look, we're going closer to the end, and I have this tradition in the podcast that I ask all my guests to share some final thoughts for the listeners to ponder through the day. But right now, since the New Year's Eve is literally going to happen tomorrow, right? Well, it's going to be literally the next evening after the podcast is live. What would be your thought to ponder for people entering into 2025, and how can they own the year?
Amazing. You're such a good podcast interviewer. Number one, set those goals, right? You'll see on dantyre.com my personal goals. And if you want a private copy, just email Zivile or myself at dantyre@gmail.com. Number two, get good at achieving your goals, right? It sounds easy, but there's like a special sauce to that. Number three, give yourself grace. In the modern world, you and I talked about this a couple of times, Z. Sometimes people put so much pressure on themselves and they get so amped up that they forget that we're all human. We all make those kind of mistakes. And you, just like you would give one of the people in your company or one of your podcast guests or something like that, you've got to give yourself that grace and understand that there are going to be things that come easy and things that come hard. And then if you're an entrepreneur or you really want to get something, be relentless, right? There's always a way. You can always figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, you need somebody to figure it out, send an email to dantyre.com and we'll help you figure it out, right? And being a problem solver like that, I can't tell you the number of times where I would just mention something to my wife and she said, why don't you do that? I'm like, that's brilliant. And I'm thinking, why didn't I ask that a week ago? Oh my goodness, amazing, right? And so being relentless, going after the things that you want can sometimes make it a better outcome.
Amazing, Dan. Thank you so much for joining Perception Paradox. And guys, I guess, it was Dan Tyre and Zivile, and wish you all happy 2025. Have a great celebration. Have a great start of the first day and get those resolutions and goals going. And see you in 1 week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.